The room is quiet, yet something is always asking to be seen. A small movement, a louder laugh than necessary. Eyes that search the faces of adults, waiting for a signal that says, "You matter here." Many children do not ask for attention with words. They ask with energy, with restlessness, with stories repeated twice, sometimes 3 times, just to keep the thread of connection alive. This need does not arrive suddenly. It forms slowly, like a habit of the heart. And often, it is misunderstood. What looks like misbehavior is frequently a question. What looks like noise is often a form of listening. Attention, to a child, is not indulgence. It is oxygen. When it feels scarce, the body learns to reach for it in any way it can. In homes, classrooms, and quiet public spaces, some children orbit adults closely. They interrupt conversations. They perform, they hover. They test boundaries not to break them, but to confirm they exist. This pattern can feel exhausting to witness. It can also feel confusing. Why does one child sit calmly in the background while another seems unable to leave the spotlight? The answer is rarely found in temperament alone. Beneath the behavior is a nervous system tuned to uncertainty. Beneath the seeking is a question about safety, belonging, and permanence. Children do not seek constant attention because they are too full. They seek it because something inside feels unfinished. Early emotional life teaches lessons long before language does. A child learns who they are by noticing how adults respond to them. When cries are answered inconsistently, when presence arrives and disappears without explanation, the mind begins to adapt. Attention becomes something unpredictable, something to check. In these early moments, the brain is not making moral judgments. It is making maps. Maps of how to stay close. Maps of how to survive emotionally. For some children, being quiet did not bring connection. Being loud did. Being pleasing did. Being impressive did. Over time, these strategies settle into identity, not as conscious choices, but as reflexes. There are environments where attention is abundant, but conditional. Praise arrives when performance is visible. Warmth appears when expectations are met. In these spaces, children learn that being loved is linked to being noticed for the right reason. They learn to monitor adults closely, adjusting themselves in real time. This is not manipulation. It is attunement, sharpened by necessity. The child becomes skilled at reading micro-expressions, tone shifts, moments of withdrawal. They sense distance before words confirm it. Attention-seeking, in this light, is not selfishness. It is vigilance. Psychologically, this pattern is often connected to attachment. When early bonds feel unstable or emotionally thin, the developing brain amplifies signals that might pull a caregiver closer. Dopamine, the chemical linked to reward and motivation, becomes involved. Each moment of attention offers a small rush of relief. Each moment of being overlooked can feel disproportionately painful. The nervous system does not experience neglect as a neutral absence. It experiences it as threat, so the body responds. Movement increases, voice rises. The child tries again. Inside these children, there is often a quiet contradiction. They crave closeness, yet fear it will vanish. They want to be seen, yet worry that visibility is fragile. This creates an internal tension that never fully rests. Even in moments of connection, part of the mind stays alert, scanning for signs of fading interest. Relaxation feels risky. Stillness feels like disappearance. Attention becomes a way to anchor reality, to prove that the relationship still exists in this moment. Adults may label this pattern as neediness, dramatics, or attention-seeking. These words flatten a complex emotional reality into something dismissible, but the behavior is a language. It speaks of early unpredictability, of emotional gaps that were never named. It speaks of a child who learned that presence must be earned repeatedly, not trusted. The child does not know another way yet. They are not trying to control the room. They are trying to remain inside it. Recognition is the first quiet shift. When behavior is seen as communication, something softens. The urgency beneath it becomes visible. Constant attention-seeking is not about wanting more than others. It is about fearing less. It is about an internal world that has not learned the feeling of secure background presence, the sense that connection remains even when nothing is being done to maintain it. For these children, attention is not a luxury, it is reassurance that the world has not turned away, and so the pattern continues, not as a flaw, but as an unfinished story, a story written early, revised constantly, and waiting, patiently, for a moment when attention no longer needs to be chased, because it is finally felt as something that stays. In the emotional beginning of this story, there is often no clear memory of loss, only a shape where something should have been. The child cannot point to it, they only feel it when adults turn away, even briefly. A glance at a phone, a conversation that does not include them. These moments land heavily, not because they are harmful on their own, but because they echo something older. The body remembers before the mind understands, and so the child responds in the only language available. These early patterns are quiet teachers. They do not shout instructions. They repeat sensations. They teach the child what to expect when nothing is happening. And if nothing once meant absence, the system learns to fill silence with effort, movement, and sound, until attention feels earned moment by moment, rather than resting as something already there inside the relationship, where safety would otherwise quietly live and grow. From a psychological lens, the child who seeks constant attention is not acting from excess desire, but from an underdeveloped sense of emotional permanence. Emotional permanence is the felt understanding that connection continues even when it is not actively reinforced. It develops slowly through repeated experiences of reliable presence. When this process is interrupted or inconsistent, the nervous system adapts by staying alert. Attention becomes proof. Without it, the system does not rest. Neuroscience helps explain why this pattern feels so intense. In early development, the brain's limbic system, responsible for emotion and threat detection, matures faster than the prefrontal cortex, which governs regulation and perspective. This means a child feels deeply long before they can interpret calmly. When attention is unpredictable, the amygdala becomes sensitive, scanning for cues of disengagement. A neutral moment can be misread as abandonment. A pause can feel like rejection. The brain is not being dramatic. It is being protective. Each time attention is received, even briefly, the brain releases dopamine. This creates relief, sometimes even joy. But relief is not the same as safety. Dopamine fades quickly, leaving the nervous system searching again. Over time, the child may become dependent on external stimulation to regulate internal states. Silence feels uncomfortable. Waiting feels heavy. Being unnoticed feels unsafe. Attention becomes a regulator, not a preference. Psychologically, this can coexist with deep empathy. Many attention-seeking children are acutely aware of others' emotional states. They read moods easily. They adjust behavior rapidly. This hyper-awareness often comes from early emotional responsibility, learning to stay connected by staying attuned. The cost of this skill is internal exhaustion. Constant monitoring leaves little room for rest. The child is present everywhere except inside themselves. As development continues, an inner conflict begins to form. On one side is the longing to be held emotionally without effort. On the other is the belief that effort is required to remain visible. The child may feel shame about their need, even while being unable to stop it. They may notice irritation from adults and internalize it as evidence of being too much. Yet the need does not disappear. It deepens. The child learns to perform confidence while quietly fearing disconnection. This conflict often expresses itself through cycles. Moments of heightened attention-seeking are followed by withdrawal. After being noticed too intensely, the child may retreat, feeling exposed or embarrassed. Then the cycle begins again. Reach, receive, retreat, repeat. This pattern is not indecision. It is ambivalence shaped by early experiences, where closeness felt both necessary and unstable. Attachment theory describes this pattern as anxious or ambivalent attachment, but labels are less important than lived experience. From the inside, it feels like standing on emotional tiptoe, always reaching upward, rarely touching solid ground. The child does not trust that attention will return if they stop reaching, so they do not stop. Resistance also emerges. Some children begin to resent the very adults they seek. They may feel anger toward caregivers who feel emotionally unavailable, even if those caregivers are physically present. This anger is confusing and often suppressed. The child fears that expressing frustration will push attention further away. So the emotion turns inward. It becomes restlessness, loudness, overfunctioning. The social world complicates this further. Peers may react negatively to constant bids for attention. Teachers may redirect or discipline. These responses, though often necessary for structure, can reinforce the child's internal narrative. Attention must be fought for, and when it is not given, something is wrong with them. The child can to associate visibility with risk, yet invisibility feels worse. Inside this tension, identity begins to form. The child may come to see themselves as the loud one, the funny one, or the difficult one. These roles provide predictability. They offer a way to be seen consistently, even if the attention is mixed with disapproval. Being known for something feels safer than being unknown entirely. The psyche prefers familiar discomfort over uncertain absence. Importantly, this pattern does not mean the child lacks resilience or depth. Often it is the opposite. These children carry a heightened sensitivity to relational nuance. They feel shifts others miss. They notice emotional absences that go unnamed. Their attention-seeking is not shallow, it is rooted in a deep awareness of relational fragility. The tragedy is not the behavior itself, it is the misunderstanding of it. When attention-seeking is framed as a character flaw, the child learns to distrust their own emotional signals. They may suppress needs or exaggerate them. Swinging between extremes, balance feels elusive, because the internal model of connection was never stable enough to rest upon. Psychology shows that healing does not come from removing the behavior, but from resolving the fear beneath it. Until the nervous system learns that connection can survive silence, the child will continue to fill that silence, not out of choice, but out of learned necessity. The inner conflict, then, is not about attention versus independence. It is about safety versus uncertainty. The child stands between wanting to relax into connection and fearing that relaxation will lead to loss. This tension is quiet, constant, and rarely articulate, but it shapes how the child enters every room, every conversation, every relationship. Understanding this conflict does not excuse harmful behavior, but it contextualizes it. It reveals that beneath the visible need is an invisible question. Will you still be there when I stop trying? The turning point rarely arrives as a single moment. It does not announce itself. It begins quietly, often unnoticed, as the nervous system encounters a different rhythm. A relationship where attention does not spike and disappear. A presence that remains even in pauses. For a child who has learned to reach constantly, this can feel unfamiliar at first, almost uncomfortable. Safety, when it is new, does not feel soothing. It feels uncertain. The body waits for the withdrawal that once followed closeness. When it does not come, something slowly rearranges. Psychologically, healing begins when attention is no longer the child's responsibility. When presence is offered without performance, when the adult's gaze does not sharpen only in moments of demand but softens in moments of stillness. This repetition matters. The brain learns through experience, not explanation. Each quiet moment of being seen without effort adds a new layer to emotional memory. Over time, the nervous system begins to tolerate silence. Then eventually, to rest within it. The child may still reach. Old patterns do not dissolve instantly, but something shifts beneath them. The reaching becomes less frantic. The pauses grow longer. The internal urgency softens. What changes first is not behavior, but sensation. The body begins to feel less alone when nothing is happening. This is emotional integration, the slow alignment between external reality and internal expectation. As the fear of disappearance eases, the child starts to discover something new, an inner presence. When attention no longer needs to be chased, space opens inward, thoughts settle, imagination deepens. The child becomes less occupied with being seen and more capable of simply being. This is not withdrawal, it is arrival. The self, once stretched outward, begins to inhabit its own center. There is often grief in this stage. Grief for the years spent reaching, Grief for the attention that was conditional or inconsistent. This grief does not always have words. It may appear as sadness without a clear cause, or as anger that finally feels safe enough to surface. This, too, is part of healing. The psyche releases what it no longer needs to protect itself from. Importantly, this process does not erase sensitivity. The child remains perceptive, empathetic, emotionally intelligent. What changes is the relationship to those traits. Sensitivity is no longer a tool for survival. It becomes a capacity for connection. Empathy no longer scans for threat. It listens. Awareness no longer monitors for loss. It observes with curiosity. As adulthood approaches, these early shifts shape future relationships. The individual who once sought constant attention may now seek depth instead. They may value consistency over intensity, presence over performance, or, if healing is incomplete, the old patterns may echo into adult life, manifesting as reassurance-seeking, fear of abandonment, or overfunctioning in relationships. But even then, awareness plants a seed. Recognition creates choice where there was once compulsion. Healing is not about becoming less needy. It is about discovering that need does not equal danger, that longing does not have to be loud to be valid, that attention, when it is secure, does not disappear when unobserved. This realization settles slowly, like dusk. There is no applause, only quiet. In the final reflection, the story widens. Children who seek constant attention are not broken. They are responsive. They adapted intelligently to emotional landscapes that required vigilance. Their behavior was a solution, not a problem. When the environment changes, the solution can soften. The system updates. The self exhales. The poetic truth is this: attention was never the destination. It was the bridge, a bridge built to cross uncertainty. Once safety is felt on the other side, the bridge does not need to be crossed so often. The child does not lose their voice. They gain silence without fear. In this silence, something profound happens. The child learns that connection can exist without constant confirmation, that love does not vanish when unobserved, that being is enough, even when unseen. This knowledge does not arrive as a thought. It arrives as a feeling, a steadiness, a background warmth. And from that place, the world looks different. Rooms feel less threatening. Relationships feel less fragile. The need to be noticed transforms into the capacity to notice, to be present, to offer attention outward, not as a request, but as a gift. The story does not end with perfection. It ends with balance, with a nervous system that no longer confuses silence with loss, with a heart that knows attention can be held inside, not chased outside, with a child, now older, who understands that being seen begins with being safe enough to stop reaching. This is not a dramatic ending. It is a gentle one, a soft landing, after years of movement, a quiet truth, learned not through words, but through presence repeated until it becomes permanent. And in that permanence, the seeking finally rests. Some needs grow loud only because they were once unheard. If this reflection resonated, sit with it. Let it deepen awareness of the quiet stories beneath visible behavior.